Discover the most dangerous insects of the forests. From bark beetles to voracious caterpillars, from leafcutter ants to leaf miner flies, each species has a devastating impact, capable of destroying trees, shoots, and leaves, altering wildlife and transforming entire ecosystems. Get ready to meet the top 20 insects that, despite their small size, can reshape whole forests with their persistence and lethal efficiency. But before we begin, subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Now, let's get started. Number 20. Bark beetles, the tiny forest demolishers. Bark beetles, despite their small size, are true agents of silent destruction in forests. They feed on tree bark, boring and creating pathways that compromise the structural integrity of plants. When attacking in large numbers, they can weaken trunks and branches, making trees vulnerable to strong winds and fungal diseases. A single beetle does not pose a significant threat, but a coordinated infestation can decimate hectares of forest in a short time, altering not just the landscape, but also the ecological balance of the area. Beyond the physical impact, these insects act as vectors for microorganisms that accelerate wood decomposition, turning healthy trees into refuges for fungi and other pests. Interestingly, their ability to locate weakened trees is remarkable. Bark beetles detect chemical signals released by plants, focusing attacks on vulnerable targets. Thus, even small, they play a devastating role, showing how seemingly insignificant organisms can trigger large-scale effects, influencing the survival of other species, soil formation, and natural forest regeneration. Number 19. Subterranean termites, the architects of devastation. Subterranean termites are masters of the forest's invisible engineering, building tunnels and nests that compromise soil and tree structures. They feed on wood and organic matter, often attacking live trunks, roots, and even nearby human constructions. These insects' ability to organize into massive colonies allows destruction to be continuous and silent. While part of the colony collects food, another defends the nest, ensuring population survival and expansion. An intense infestation can compromise centuries-old trees, making them unstable when prone to collapse. Additionally, the accelerated decomposition caused by termites alters nutrient cycling, impacting plants that rely on fertile soil to grow. Despite their small size, subterranean termites demonstrate how collective action can transform entire ecosystems, proving that forest devastation doesn't depend on size but on organization, persistence, and efficiency. Their invisible presence underscores the importance of ecological monitoring and control to prevent an apparently insignificant colony from becoming a force capable of reshaping the natural landscape. Number 18. Defoliating moths, the leaf-devouring shadows. Defoliating moths pose a silent and efficient threat to forests, especially during their larval stages when they become voracious leaf eaters. Each caterpillar consumes large amounts of foliage, reducing the tree's photosynthetic capacity and weakening their natural resistance. Massive infestations can lead to complete defoliation, leaving trees vulnerable to diseases, secondary pests, and even death. The impact extends beyond trees. Animals dependent on vegetation for shelter and food suffer from habitat loss, causing imbalances throughout the food chain. Defoliating moths have short reproductive cycles and can disperse rapidly, making natural control difficult. Some species even develop resistance to pesticides, requiring complex ecological strategies to contain them. Despite their delicate and seemingly harmless appearance, these moths demonstrate how fragile insects can provoke drastic transformations in entire ecosystems, highlighting the importance of understanding their dynamics and impacts before small populations turn into irreversible forest crises. Number 17. Predatory wasps, the invisible hunters of the forest. Predatory wasps play a doubly devastating role in forest dynamics. On one hand, they are natural predators of many insects, which may seem beneficial. On the other, their voracity and collective behavior can turn small prey populations into sources of destruction, altering the ecological balance unexpectedly. Many wasp species lay their eggs inside other insects, paralyzing or killing the prey while their larvae develop. When this mechanism occurs on a large scale, it can eliminate insects that perform vital functions, such as pollination or decomposition, creating a cascade effect that impacts plants and animals at all levels of the food chain. Additionally, some wasps build enormous nests and collect large amounts of plant material and insects to feed their colonies. The impact of this collection is not limited to reducing prey populations. It also contributes to the destruction of leaves, shoots, and even small trees. The social intelligence of wasps allows for coordinated attacks, efficient colony protection, and rapid adaptation to environmental changes. This means that even relatively relatively small, they can devastate significant forest areas unnoticed. Research shows that when introduced into new ecosystems, predatory wasps can cause drastic declines in native insect species, triggering imbalances that take years to correct. Understanding their biology, feeding habits, and reproductive strategies is therefore essential for any forest conservation plan. Predatory wasps remind us that in nature, destruction is not always a result of physical strength or size. Often, intelligence, organization, and persistence are enough to turn small organisms into large-scale threats. Number 16, leaf mining caterpillars, the silent leaf diggers. Leaf mining caterpillars are small, but their impact is devastating. They bore into leaves, creating internal tunnels that compromise photosynthesis and weaken the plant. Though seemingly harmless at first glance, when present in large numbers, they can destroy the foliage of entire trees, compromising growth and resistance to pests and diseases. Additionally, their presence opens the way for fungi and bacteria, accelerating plant tissue degradation and altering ecosystem balance. Some species have extremely short reproductive cycles and can disperse quickly, making natural control difficult and allowing infestations to spread across hectares of forest in a short time. The destruction caused by leaf miners affects not only trees but also animals that rely on vegetation for shelter and food, triggering cascading effects throughout the food chain. Studies show that these caterpillars possess an incredible adaptability. They switch hosts when their preferred plant becomes scarce, ensuring species survival and continuity of destruction. They also serve as food for natural predators, but the balance is delicate. When populations explode, even predators cannot control the devastation. These tiny diggers remind us that in nature, size does not equal power. Even small organisms can generate massive impacts when acting collectively and persistently. Constant monitoring and strategic ecological interventions are essential to prevent leaf miners from turning entire forest areas into weakened, vulnerable grounds, compromising biodiversity and natural vegetation regeneration. Number 15, wood borers, the invisible tree drillers. Wood borers are small insects, but their impact on forests can be colossal. They lay their eggs inside tree trunks and branches, and their larvae feed on the wood, creating internal tunnels that compromise plant structural integrity. Over time, these perforations make centuries-old trees fragile and prone to falling, drastically altering the landscape and ecosystem balance. The wood borer's life cycle is relatively long, but their capacity for mass reproduction ensures that infestations can grow exponentially, quickly affecting large forest areas. The damage caused by these larvae is not limited to physical harm. The affected wood becomes susceptible to fungi, bacteria, and other secondary pests, accelerating decomposition and turning healthy trees into degradation hubs. Moreover, by boring into wood, wood borers impact animals that rely on trunks for shelter, such as birds and small mammals, causing changes in local wildlife. An impressive detail is their precision in locating vulnerable trees. They detect chemical signals released by weakened or stressed plants, concentrating activity on targets that will maximize larval survival. This combination of chemical intelligence, feeding efficiency, and reproductive capacity makes wood borers silent agents of destruction, capable of transforming entire forests into fragile areas vulnerable to further disturbances. Therefore, although small and discreet, these borers demonstrate that ecological destruction can be slow but extremely effective, reminding us that ecosystem preservation depends on constant vigilance and strategic interventions to protect vital trees from invisible devastation. Number 14, invasive ladybugs, predators of fragile balance. Ladybugs, popularly known for their harmless appearance, can become agents of imbalance in forest ecosystems when invasive species enter new areas. Unlike native ladybugs, which help control aphids and other small insects, invasive species may prey indiscriminately and compete with native insects, altering food chain dynamics. Their voracity is not limited to smaller prey. By consuming insects that perform vital roles, such as pollinators or decomposers, they indirectly impact plants, seeds, and microhabitats that support other organisms. In tropical areas, certain invasive ladybugs can reproduce rapidly, forming large populations that dominate territories, displacing or drastically reducing native species. The cascading effect can decrease biodiversity, alter plant reproductive cycles, and even collapse small animal populations that depend on a balance of prey and predators. Additionally, the social behavior of these invasive ladybugs allows them to spread across kilometers, colonizing new habitats quickly and causing long-lasting causing damage. Though small and visually harmless, these ladybugs exemplify how the uncontrolled introduction or proliferation of a single insect type can completely destabilize a forest, reinforcing the need for constant monitoring, ecological control, and preservation of native species to maintain ecosystem health and resilience. Number 13. Voracious aphids, small suckers, big destroyers. Aphids are small insects that feed on plant sap, but their impact on forests is much greater than their size suggests. Each aphid attaches to leaves, shoots, and stems, extracting essential nutrients and gradually weakening the plant. In massive infestations, entire trees can lose vigor, becoming vulnerable to diseases, fungi, and other secondary pests. Beyond direct damage, aphids act as vectors for viruses and microorganisms that further compromise plant health, significantly altering vegetation composition and density. Their reproduction is extremely rapid. Some species can produce dozens of generations in a single season, making natural control almost impossible without strategic ecological intervention. Animals that depend on vegetation for shelter and food also suffer from the reduction of plant cover caused by these infestations. Another critical point is that aphids release sugary substances called honeydew, which attract ants and other insects that, by protecting the aphids, further increase their proliferation. This cascading effect can transform previously healthy areas into degraded zones where new plant growth is compromised and biodiversity decreases. Despite their fragile appearance and seemingly passive behavior, aphids exemplify how persistence, rapid reproduction, and interaction with other species can turn tiny insects into true agents of ecological destruction, capable of reshaping large forest areas and compromising the balance of entire ecosystems. Number 12. Casuar beetles, destructive tree coleopterans. Casuar beetles are known for their ability to attack healthy trees, becoming true agents of silent destruction in tropical forests. By boring into the bark and feeding on the wood, they weaken tree structures, making them vulnerable to falls, diseases, and attacks from other insects. Females lay eggs inside the trunk, and as the larvae develop, they create internal tunnels that compromise the plant's integrity. The destruction is not immediate, but cumulative. Over time, the combination of perforations, secondary infections, and environmental stress can kill centuries-old trees, transforming the landscape and altering the local ecosystem. These beetles have reproductive cycles that allow them to rapidly multiply their populations, making natural control difficult, especially when efficient predators are absent. Furthermore, their indirect actions affect local fauna. Animals that rely on trunks for shelter, such as birds, bats, and small mammals, lose their habitat while natural vegetation regeneration is compromised. Studies show that casuar beetles can detect weakened or stressed trees through chemical signals, concentrating their attacks on strategic targets and maximizing destructive efficiency. Despite their small size, these insects demonstrate how the combination of chemical intelligence, biological organization, and persistence can turn seemingly harmless beings into forces capable of reshaping entire forests, emphasizing the importance of constant monitoring and ecological interventions to protect fragile ecosystems. Number 11. Defoliating caterpillars, mass devourers of the canopy. Defoliating caterpillars are insects that, despite their small size, possess immense destructive power when their populations grow uncontrollably. They feed on tree leaves, compromising photosynthesis and weakening plants that, after losing large portions of foliage, become vulnerable to diseases, secondary pests, and branch falls. During outbreaks, it is common for a single caterpillar species to completely defoliate entire trees, drastically altering the forest landscape. This impact is not limited to vegetation. Animals dependent on foliage for shelter and food, such as birds, insects, and small mammals, suffer from habitat loss, creating imbalances throughout the food chain. Defoliating caterpillars have rapid reproductive cycles and efficient dispersal capabilities, allowing infestations to spread quickly across large forest areas. Additionally, some species have developed natural resistance to predators and parasitism, limiting natural control. The damage caused by these caterpillars is both direct and indirect. While they consume leaves, they also facilitate the entry of fungi and bacteria that accelerate plant degradation. Therefore, even as seemingly fragile creatures, defoliating caterpillars demonstrate that persistence, collective behavior, and feeding efficiency can transform small insects into agents capable of reshaping entire ecosystems. Continuous monitoring and adequate ecological strategies are essential to prevent caterpillar outbreaks from compromising biodiversity and natural forest regeneration. Number 10. Leafcutter ants, engineers and forest destroyers. Leafcutter ants are highly organized social insects and at the same time, true forces of destruction in tropical forests. They cut leaves with their sharp mandibles, transporting massive amounts of plant material to their underground nests. There, they cultivate fungi that serve as food for the entire colony. A single colony can devastate dozens of trees in just a few weeks, altering ecosystem balance and affecting animals that rely on vegetation for shelter and food. The destructive power of leafcutter ants is not only in the quantity of leaves they cut, but also in the organization of their society. Workers, soldiers, and queens perform specific functions that ensure maximum efficiency in every operation. Moreover, these ants have incredible adaptability. Even after fires or deforestation, they quickly reorganize and resume their activities. Their constant action also alters soil composition, affecting plant regeneration and nutrient distribution. Research shows they can change local vegetation, favoring certain species over others, transforming entire ecosystems over time. Despite their small size, these ants prove that collective intelligence, persistence, and efficiency can be more devastating than physical size, making them true agents of transformation and, at the same time, a silent threat to tropical forests. Number 9. Destructive weevils, predators of seeds and shoots. Weevils are small insects that, despite their discreet appearance, have a devastating impact on the future of forests. They feed on seeds, grains, and shoots, compromising germination and the propagation of various tree species. By destroying seeds, weevils limit natural vegetation renewal, directly affecting biodiversity and the forest's capacity to regenerate. When their population grows uncontrollably, they can turn entire areas into degraded zones where few trees can fully develop. Beyond direct damage, weevils facilitate the entry of fungi and microorganisms that accelerate seed and shoot decomposition, amplifying the destructive effect. These species have short life cycles and rapid reproductive capacity, allowing infestations to multiply within weeks. Weevils' impact also extends to fauna, animals dependent on seeds, as a food source may face scarcity, creating cascading effects in the food chain. Studies show that some weevils can detect specific plant chemicals, concentrating attacks on the most nutritious or vulnerable seeds, increasing destructive efficiency. Despite their small size, these insects demonstrate how persistent and coordinated actions by tiny organisms can reshape entire ecosystems, highlighting the importance of monitoring, control, and preservation strategies to prevent weevil populations from permanently compromising the health and diversity of tropical forests. Number 8. Cutting cicadas, the silent shoot destroyers. Cutting cicadas, although famous for their loud songs, have a silent and extremely harmful side for forests. Their larvae live in the soil, feeding on roots and shoots of young trees, weakening them from the base. This invisible attack prevents new trees from establishing, compromising natural regeneration, and creating gaps in the vegetation cover. Adults of some species also feed on leaves and stems, although their most significant impact comes from root damage. In large populations, cutting cicadas can devastate entire reforested areas and secondary forests, altering species composition and reducing biodiversity. Reproduction is highly efficient. Thousands of eggs can be laid in the soil, ensuring that the infestation persists for generations. Furthermore, the presence of these cicadas attracts predators, but often in insufficient numbers to control the population, allowing destruction to continue. The damage caused by their larvae is cumulative and can last for years, making young trees vulnerable to wind, drought, and other secondary pests. Thus, cutting cicadas demonstrate that even without visibly attacking large trees, small insects can have immense ecological impacts, altering regeneration cycles and compromising the overall health of an entire forest. Number 7. Leaf-tail borers, silent destroyers of young trees. Leaf-tail borers are extremely small insects, yet their destructive power is unmatched by most others in tropical and subtropical forests. They attack leaves, branches, and even shoots of young trees, boring into tissues and feeding almost invisibly. Despite their fragile and discreet appearance, their impact is devastating because the initial damage is often imperceptible, allowing infestations to spread before control measures can be applied. During their life cycle, leaf-tail borers lay eggs inside the leaves, from which larvae emerge and tunnel through veins, compromising the plant's ability to photosynthesize efficiently. The destruction of leaves not only limits the plant's energy production, but also weakens the structural resistance of branches and shoots, making them vulnerable to wind, heavy rain, and other environmental factors. Young trees, which lack robust trunks, are especially susceptible, and massive infestations can prevent the growth of new generations, compromising natural forest regeneration. Beyond direct damage to vegetation, these borers cause significant significant indirect impacts on the ecosystem. By damaging leaves and shoots, they open the way for fungi and bacteria that accelerate decomposition, altering soil chemistry and affecting neighboring plants. This cumulative interaction between direct attack and facilitation of secondary diseases creates a cascading effect, causing the entire forest to suffer even when only a small area is initially infested. Animals that rely on foliage for shelter and food, such as herbivorous insects, birds, and small mammals, also face resource scarcity, disrupting the local food chain. Another critical point is the adaptive capacity of leaf-tail borers. They can switch hosts when their preferred plant becomes scarce, allowing them to survive in different types of vegetation and continue their devastation. Their reproduction is extremely rapid. Under favorable conditions, a single female can produce dozens of offspring, each capable of perpetuating the destructive cycle. This exponential population growth quickly turns small infestations into major threats over extensive forest areas. The collective behavior of these insects also contributes to their destructive efficiency. They do not attack randomly. Instead, they identify and focus on the most vulnerable or nutritious individuals, maximizing damage and ensuring larval survival. This strategy demonstrates that in nature, organization and persistence can be as effective as physical size, allowing small insects to have massive impacts on complex ecosystems. Furthermore, the presence of leaf-tail borers influences the evolution of other species. Plants that survive attacks develop defensive mechanisms such as thicker leaves or chemical repellents, while species that fail to adapt are eliminated, gradually altering forest composition. This process shows that although destructive, the impact of these borers also shapes biodiversity in the long term, creating a dynamic balance between survival and adaptation. Controlling leaf-tail borers is challenging. Natural predators such as insectivorous birds and certain predatory beetles help maintain population control, but rarely handle massive infestations. Chemical methods can be effective in localized areas, but are not feasible for large forest expanses and can harm other species. The most effective solution involves constant monitoring, integrated pest management, and ecological strategies that consider the ecosystem's full complexity, including interactions between plants, insects, and predators. In summary, leaf-tail borers demonstrate that forest devastation does not always depend on an organism's size or strength. Small insects, through organization, persistence, and feeding efficiency, can cause significant impacts, altering regeneration cycles, species composition, and even entire food chains. Number 6. Leaf miner flies, silent destroyers of leaves and shoots. Leaf miner flies are small, almost imperceptible insects, yet they have a devastating impact on entire forests, especially in tropical and subtropical areas. Their destructive power is directly linked to larval feeding, which penetrates leaves, stems, and shoots of trees, excavating internal tunnels that compromise the plant's ability to grow and strengthen. Although discreet, their cumulative actions can decimate young plants, reduce vegetation cover, and drastically alter natural forest regeneration. The life cycle of leaf miner flies is highly efficient. Females lay eggs directly on leaf surfaces or young plant tissues, from which larvae emerge and begin mining immediately. This internal excavation causes damage that is invisible at first glance but seriously impairs photosynthesis, disrupts water and nutrient transport, and makes leaves and branches more vulnerable to adverse environmental factors such as strong winds, heavy rain, and excessive sunlight. Young trees are particularly affected, and large populations of leaf miner flies can completely prevent the regeneration of key forest species. In addition to direct vegetation damage, leaf miner flies create opportunities for secondary diseases. By piercing plant tissues, they open pathways for fungi and bacteria that accelerate decomposition, alter soil chemical composition, and affect the growth of nearby plants. This cumulative effect can transform dense forest areas into weakened regions, reducing biodiversity and creating irregular vegetation cover. Animals that depend on leaves, shoots, and branches for shelter and food are also affected, causing food chain imbalances and reducing native species abundance. Another critical factor is the adaptive capacity of leaf miner flies. They do not rely on a single plant species to survive. When one host becomes scarce, the flies move to others, ensuring the continuity of their destructive activity. This ecological flexibility makes the species extremely resilient and difficult to control, especially in forests with high plant diversity. Furthermore, the rapid reproduction of leaf miner flies allows small populations to quickly become widespread infestations, threatening large areas within weeks. The behavior of leaf miner flies also contributes to their efficiency as destroyers. They do not attack randomly, they can detect specific chemicals released by plants, concentrating on the most vulnerable or nutritious individuals. This strategic behavior increases destructive efficiency and ensures that their larvae have higher survival chances, perpetuating the cycle of destruction. Even as small and discrete insects, their coordinated actions have large-scale effects on the ecosystem. Leaf miner flies also influence plant evolution. Trees that survive attacks develop defensive mechanisms, such as tougher leaves, production of repellent chemicals, or faster growth, while less adapted plants are eliminated. This selective process gradually alters forest composition, creating an ecosystem adapted to the persistent presence of these pests. Controlling leaf miner flies is challenging. Natural predators such as insectivorous birds, beetles, and parasitic wasps can help contain populations, but rarely control large, dispersed infestations. Chemical methods are limited in extensive forests due to side effects on other species and ecological imbalance risks. The most effective approach involves integrated pest management, constant monitoring, and ecological strategies that consider the full complexity of the ecosystem, including interactions between plants, insects, and predators. Number 5. Social wasps, collective predators and forest remodelers. Social wasps represent one of the most organized and effective predatory forces in tropical and subtropical forests. Unlike solitary insects, these wasps have highly structured colonies where each individual performs specific roles that ensure maximum efficiency in feeding, defense, and reproduction. Despite their relatively small size, social wasps have a devastating impact on ecological balance, as their actions go far beyond direct predation. They alter populations of other insects, influence plant reproduction, and can even affect larger animals that depend on these insects for food. The life cycle of these wasps is adapted to ensure colony survival and expansion. Queens lay eggs that give rise to workers, soldiers, and new queens, forming a network capable of coordinating complex attacks on prey. They capture various types of insects, from aphids and larvae to small arthropods, using them as direct food or to feed their larvae. This intense predation can drastically reduce herbivore populations, destabilizing the local food chain and creating indirect effects on plants and animals that rely on those species. Beyond predation, social wasps indirectly impact plants. By reducing herbivore populations, some plants may grow faster, while others may suffer, as the absence of certain pollinators or dispersers alters natural reproduction. In areas where wasps are introduced or become overly numerous, this effect can intensify, leading to changes in species composition and forest structure. The collective behavior of social wasps also contributes to their destructive efficiency. They can coordinate group attacks, defend their nests, and maximize prey capture. This organization allows entire colonies to survive external threats and expand rapidly into new territories, increasing their ecosystem impact. Natural predators such as birds and other predatory insects help control populations but rarely contain extensive infestations, especially when the colony is well established. Social wasps also influence the evolution of other species. Insects that survive attacks develop chemical or behavioral defenses, while plants and animals that depend on these insects must adapt to ecosystem changes. This selective pressure shapes local biodiversity quietly and cumulatively, gradually transforming the forest over time. Another important factor is the adaptability of social wasps to different environments. They can establish themselves in new areas, exploit local prey species, and quickly alter ecological balance. This flexibility makes social wasps a threat both in native forests and in reforested or degraded areas. In terms of control, the most effective approach involves integrated pest management, constant monitoring, and deep understanding of the ecosystem. Chemical methods are limited due to impacts on non-target species, while ecological strategies that encourage natural predators or create physical barriers can be more sustainable and effective long term. Number 4. Tree aphids, sapsuckers and agents of imbalance. Tree aphids are small insects that exert a disproportionately large impact on tropical and subtropical forests. By feeding on tree sap, they directly compromise plant health, weakening trunks, branches, and leaves. This continuous attack reduces photosynthetic capacity, lowers the tree's natural resistance to diseases and secondary pests, and in severe infestations can kill century-old individuals. Although small, aphids act as ecological destabilizers, causing indirect effects that reverberate throughout the ecosystem. ecosystem. The life cycle of tree aphids is rapid and adaptive. A single female can produce dozens of offspring within weeks, creating massive populations capable of invading hectares of forest. They reproduce both sexually and asexually, allowing even a single initial infestation to quickly escalate into a large-scale problem. While feeding, aphids secrete sugary substances called honeydew, which attract ants and other insects that protect them from natural predators. This mutualistic behavior enhances their survival and intensifies their impact on trees and overall forest ecological balance. Beyond direct plant damage, tree aphids act as vectors for viruses and microorganisms that further harm plant health. They facilitate pathogen spread, altering the chemical composition of plant tissues and compromising natural forest regeneration. Affected trees lose vigor, leaves and shoots become more fragile, and resistance to other insects declines, creating a cascading destruction effect that impacts not only plants, but also the fauna that depend on them. The ecological impact of tree aphids extends beyond trees. Herbivorous animals that rely on leaves face food shortages. Predators feeding on these herbivores suffer from prey reduction, and the entire food chain is altered. This cascading effect demonstrates that small insects, when present in large numbers and exhibiting adaptive behavior, can remodel entire ecosystems even without immediately visible destruction. Number 3. Tent-eating caterpillars. Silent devastators of canopies and shoots. Tent-eating caterpillars are insects that, despite their small size, have a devastating impact on tropical and subtropical forests. They feed on leaves, shoots, and young branches, compromising photosynthesis and structurally weakening vegetation. Unlike other herbivores, these caterpillars act in concentrated groups, forming colonies that attack specific areas of trees, often causing near total defoliation. During population outbreaks, tent-eating caterpillar infestations can destroy hectares of forest in weeks, drastically altering the landscape and affecting fauna that rely on foliage for shelter and food. Their life cycle is highly efficient. Females lay eggs on leaves and branches, and larvae emerge ready to feed. They possess defense mechanisms that make them less vulnerable to predators, such as camouflaged coloration and irritating chemical secretions. These strategies increase survival chances, allowing small populations to quickly grow into large infestations. Additionally, their dispersal is rapid and coordinated. By moving in groups, they systematically attack new areas, maximizing impact on vegetation. Number 2. Invasive ants. Small but dominant. Invasive ants can rapidly dominate any forest area. They compete with native species for food, attack smaller insects, and protect aphids and other sap-sucking insects, amplifying plant destruction. Their aggressive behavior and social organization allow coordinated attacks, devastating shoots, leaves, and seeds. These ants alter fauna and flora balance, hindering pollination and seed dispersal. Even though small, their colonies grow quickly and occupy large territories, causing long-lasting ecosystem impacts. Their silent presence transforms entire areas into degraded zones, demonstrating that collective strength can surpass individual size. Number 1. Defoliating butterflies. Beauty that hides destruction. Some butterflies during their larval stage are voracious leaf eaters. Massive feeding can defoliate young trees, weakening them and opening the way for fungi and secondary pests. This impact reduces natural regeneration and affects animals that depend on vegetation for shelter and food. Although adults are harmless, the caterpillars pose a significant threat, showing how seemingly delicate insects can silently and cumulatively alter entire ecosystems. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Also, check out other interesting content appearing on your screen now, and I'll see you in the next video. See you next time.